In this video, we'll try and understand that how the internet works. And that way, we'll also study a very important topic called domain name system. The short form is DNS. Okay. Now, if you want to understand what internet is, then in simplest possible terms, I will say that the internet is basically a long cable to whom several computers are connected. So you have several computers connected to the internet. But not all the computers on the internet are of the same type. Some of them are clients and some of them are servers. Now, what is a client? So, a client is that computer which we normally use for surfing the internet. So, the computer which you must be using for browsing the any website, for surfing the net, okay, that computer is the client. And the server is that computer which will host the website, which will store the website. So for example, the website facebook.com could be stored in this particular server. The website google.com could be stored in this particular server. So that way there are thousands of clients and thousands of servers connected to the internet. In fact, not thousands, it could be millions. Okay. Now, what happens when you want to surf the internet? When you want to browse some particular website? So, let's say you want to visit a website www.sandeepgupta.org. Okay. Now, what happens is over here we are going to study an important concept. Okay. So pay good attention to what I'll be explaining you. Now, before we understand what happens when you want to visit a website, let's understand something else. See, now on the internet, every website, every computer, every server has an associated IP address. By the way, IP stands for Internet Protocol. So I repeat, every website, every computer, every server on the internet has an associated Internet Protocol address, IP address. Okay. So that IP address could be something like 172.16.254.1, something like that. Now, this IP address will uniquely identify one particular computer on the internet. So let's say, as I told you, you want to visit www.sandeepgupta.org. Let's say this website is hosted on this particular server and the IP address of this server is this one, 172.16 and so on. All right. Now, what happens is the internet basically runs on IP addresses. So what happens is that if you want to surf this website sandeepgupta.org, then your computer, the client computer, should use this IP address to locate the server on which sandeepgupta.org is stored. Okay. So what your computer will do is it will give this IP address to the routers, to the switches which are present on the internet. And these routers and switches, what they will do is they will make some sense of this numeric value, and from this numeric value they will track down the server on which the website is hosted. Alright, so I hope you understood this much. But here is a problem. The problem is that there are millions of websites, and for a human being it is not possible to remember these numeric IP addresses. So that's why every website has an associated domain name. I repeat, domain name. Now you must be wondering what is this domain name? So this domain name is nothing but the website address which we type in our browser address bar. So for example, the domain name of of this particular website could be this thing. Okay. So basically this numeric address and this domain name are one and the same. The only difference is this is for our understanding and this is for the understanding of the network, of the computer, of the server. Okay. All right. Now the thing is, what is this domain name system? Okay, what is this DNS? So first let me define it to you and then I'll explain it to you. So I can say that this domain name system is a mechanism that converts this domain name to the equivalent IP address. Okay. So what I'm trying to say over here is the concept is something like this. See, the routers and the switches which are present on the network, okay, they will not understand this domain name. So if they want to track down this server on which this website is hosted, then what your computer should be doing is that your computer should be giving this IP address to the routers and the switches which are there on this network. Okay. So the routers, the switches and all other machines need this IP address, but you don't know this IP address. Okay, you just know this domain name. So in your website, in your web browser address bar, you will type the domain name. Okay, now there should be a mechanism which will convert this domain name to this IP address. Okay, and that mechanism, okay, which finds the equivalent IP address for every domain name, that mechanism is called domain name system. If you still don't understand this, then understand it in this way, that is DNS is like a phone book for the internet. I repeat, phone book. So in your phone, if you want to find the phone number of some particular person, then what you will do is you will open your contacts list. I mean, you will open the phone book and you will search that phone book for the name of the person. Why? Because you don't know the phone number, you want to know the phone number. So you will search the phone book for the name of the person, and once you locate the name of the person, with the name, the phone number will be present, which you will note it down. Okay, so this is basically the domain name system. We will give the domain name, the website address to this domain name system, and the domain name system will give us the IP address. So diagrammatically speaking, see, this is the domain name, this is the web address which I give to the domain name system mechanism, and this mechanism produces the equivalent IP address. Okay. Now, this DNS service, this DNS mechanism is not very simple. It is a complex mechanism, and we need to understand in great detail that how this mechanism works. So let's do that. Now let's say that you open the web browser on your computer. I'll call your computer as requesting host. So on the requesting host, you open the web browser and you give this address www.sandeepgupta.org. Now let's understand the DNS mechanism over here, how things take place. The moment you hit the enter key, what will happen is your computer will carry out step number 1 of DNS over here, which is called search the local DNS cache. I hope you know what is the meaning of cache. Cache over here means temporary data. So what happens is that in every computer there is a cache in which there are IP addresses of all the recently visited website. So if your computer has recently visited sandeepgupta.org, then its IP address will be present in the local DNS cache. Okay. So from the local DNS cache, the IP address will be retrieved and our computer will directly contact the server on which this website is hosted. Now let's say that we are visiting this website for the first time. Now, if we are visiting this website for the first time, then obviously in our computer, its details, its IP address will not be present. Okay. So this step, search the local DNS cache, will not yield any result. So now what to do? So now step number 2 is carried out, and step number 2 is ask the resolver. By the way, this resolver is also called recursive DNS server, and it is also a server. Now what exactly it is? So what happens is that if you are on the internet, then obviously you must be having some internet service provider. Now this internet service provider could be a company like Vodafone or Airtel or anything else. Now these companies maintain a server called resolver, and within that resolver it has its own DNS cache. Okay. Now you know what is the meaning of cache. Cache basically means temporary data, and inside the DNS cache there will be details of the IP addresses of the websites. So basically this resolver, pay attention to this resolver will have the IP address of the websites visited by all its customers. I repeat, it will have the resolver will have the IP address of the websites which are visited by all its customers. So let's say you have taken the internet service of Vodafone, okay? So whatever websites are visited by Vodafone customers, okay, their IP addresses will be present in this resolver, okay? Now, if the IP address is found here, the IP address for sandeepgupta.org, if it is found here, then this IP address is given back to the requesting host, and the requesting host will now contact the server directly. Now let's take a situation in which this website is launched only 10 minutes back. Okay, this website is completely new and it was launched only 10 minutes back. Okay, nobody in this world knows about this website. Let's say you are the first person visiting this website. So in that case, this resolver will not have the IP address of this website. So now step number 3 will be carried out, and that step number 3 is called ask the root server. The root server is sometimes also called root name server. Now what exactly is this root server? Pay good attention, things are interesting but slightly tricky. Now throughout this entire world, there are 13 sets of root servers which are strategically placed all around the world. So there could be one set of root server in, let's say, US, another set of root server, let's say, in South America, another set of root server in UK, one in India, another in Japan, and so on. Okay. Now these root servers, as I told you, there are 13 sets of root servers, and these root servers are managed by 12 different organizations. Okay. Now what exactly this root server will do? So as I told you that now the resolver has sent a query to this root server. So the resolver is asking the root server that what is the IP address of this website. The root server will never know the IP address of this particular website. No, it will never know the IP address of this website. That is not its work. So then the question is, what the root server will then know? What the root server will do is it will read this domain name from right to left. I repeat, from right to left. So when it starts from the right side, okay, it will read this org. By the way, this org is called top level domain. I repeat, top level domain. In short, we say TLD. Okay. Now, what this root server will do is it will notice that the TLD over here is org. Okay. And now what it will do, it will send the resolver the address of the TLD server. I repeat, it will send the resolver the address of the TLD server. See, what happens is the way in which we have many root servers, that way we have many TLD servers. So there will be some particular servers which will handle the data for .com. There will be some servers which will have IP addresses for .org, .us, .uk, .in, and so on. Okay. So such servers are called TLD servers. Okay. So this root server, what it will do is it will tell the resolver that, look, I don't know what is the IP address of this website, okay, but I can give you the IP address of the server which may have the IP address of this website, okay. So that IP address is provided by the root server to resolver. Now what the resolver will do is it will carry out the next step, and the next step is called ask the TLD server, okay. So now the resolver will ask the TLD server that do you have the IP address of this website, okay. By the way, this TLD server, okay, will give you information only about those websites whose ending is .org, okay. Anyway, so the resolver is asking the TLD server that do you have the address, the IP address for this website. Once again, to your disappointment, the TLD server will also not have IP address of any specific website. No, it will never have IP address of one single website. So what the TLD server will do is it will tell the resolver that, look, I don't know the IP address of this particular website, but I know IP address of a server who can give you the IP address of this website. and that server is called authoritative name server. I repeat, authoritative name server. So now the TLD server will give the address of authoritative name server to resolver. Now I think it is easy to guess the next step. What is the next step? Asking the authoritative name server. Okay, so now the resolver will ask this authoritative name server that, look, do you have the address for this website? And the authoritative name server will definitely have the address of this website if the website exists. Now what the authoritative name server will do is, within its records, it will check whether the IP address of this website exists. So now let's say the IP address of this website exists in its records, okay? And let's say this website is somewhere hosted on this particular server, okay? So what the authoritative name server will do is, it will tell the resolver, yes, I have found the IP address of the server, this server, and I will give you the IP address. So now the IP address of the server is given by authoritative name server to resolver. What the resolver will first do is that now it will update its local DNS cache. So within its computer memory, the resolver will store the IP address of this website for future use. And after that, it will give the same IP address to the requesting host. So this was the entire DNS mechanism, after which this requesting host has the IP address of this website. So now what this computer will do? Very simple. Now it will contact the server directly. Let me see that did you really understand this? Let's say after 2-3 days, once again on this computer, somebody wants to visit the same website. If you want to visit the same website once again, what do you think? All these steps will be carried out once again? The answer is a definite no. Why? Because now this computer has the IP address of this website, so it will directly contact this website. Okay, so this was the mechanism of DNS.